Hey BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. So I thought I would do an update video just to be consistent. Figure just so I did not realize that I totally forgot today was a holiday. It's Veterans Day here in America. And so that meant I cannot turn my library books, which is probably a good thing because I wanted to also stop by Gibbons Roast Office bookstore, and that would mean I would have to put all my library books. I would have to have them in the backpack and be lugging the backpack around to at the bookstore, and it would make it a bit of a hassle. So it's probably good that I ended up. It turns out it was closed because it's a holiday. It's a holiday, and also it's a good thing that they didn't schedule me to go to work today because it's great. I guarantee you, it's pretty crazy, pretty busy at least at Harris Theater. That's what you totally forgot because it's one of those holidays that no disrespect to the veterans, but it's such a small holiday. It's like, and it's not as commercial. It's not commercialized like Christmas or Thanksgiving or Halloween. It's one of those holidays that you kind of just forget. I mean, it's not as bad as like Labor Day where I didn't even know what it meant. Although it kind of applies to even more because I do work I finally work. Okay, that should, well, that should, oh, no, that only helps, like, a little bit. The problem with this spot is I have this big window that's right here, and it's with glaring light. But, at least that's a little bit better, though. So I can't turn my library books in, but I'm gonna try to get Summer finished today, which, oh my, like, the man that's interested in our main character, Charity, she has, basically, in case you don't remember from what I said, because I think I did kind of give a brief description about it before I started reading, you have this girl, Charity, who is from up in the mountains that apparently has a very scary reputation. She is founded by this lawyer named Mr. Royale, and he kind of adopts her as his daughter. And years later, when she's like a young adult, he starts showing a little bit of interest in her because his wife is dead. He's a lonely man, and he wants to marry her. But she has no interest in him. She sees him as just this old guy that's like a father to her. And oh my god, that guy I want to punch in the face. He was such an asshole to her. He just wants to control her. And like there's this young cousin of one of the characters, Miss Hatchard, who comes to town. Lucius Varney or Harney comes to town, and she immediately is taken with this guy. She's smitten with him, and he's her age, and she's interested in him. But of course, Mr. Royale is saying like, "Oh, this guy's just gonna leave you and abandon you, and you should get married to him." And it's like, the only reason why you're saying that is because you want to control her. You figure you have a right to her and you own her, and that you want to marry. Like, he proposes to her twice. The first time is after like she takes away his alcohol, and he tries to get it back from her, but then she's like, "No, you're drunk, and you don't need this." And I'm guessing it's one of these things where, oh, well, she's pretty and she's, maybe she can, and, I'm lonely and she could help. And I don't know, maybe he was thinking she can prevent me from becoming alcoholic and everything. And, and like I said, he was lonely. And the second time, I don't even remember what led to the second proposal. Oh, no, my dad's closing the garage. No, my mom's coming home. She went to go visit my sister in Virginia because my brother-in-law's out of town, so I thought maybe that was her. But I guess it's my dad closing the garage. I don't remember why the second time he proposed to her. But and then basically there's this whole whirlwind romance between Charity and Lucius, and at one point in the story they decide to go to the next town over because there's like a fair thing there or something, like a lot to do. It's like going to, going to Raleigh to hang out, versus staying around here in the small town. It would be like if a guy was taking me to Raleigh kind of thing. And everything is good. They have a great time, and in fact, they kiss because they're on the lake watching the fireworks because it's so beautiful and so amazing, even bigger than in their little town. And he kisses her, and unfortunately, she looks a little disheveled, And then Mr. Rowe has the nerve to show up drunk and calls her a whore because she looks disheveled, and clearly she's making out with the guy, and it's like, oh my god. I mean, of course, considering this was written back then, probably like the 1800s or early 1900s, so of course, their definition of, oh, my mom is home. Never mind. I'll finish talking to you guys, and then I'll say hi to my mom. But their definition of now in these modern times, women will live with men before they marry them, and they would probably think, oh dear God, that's such a sin. How dare you? Which, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big commitment. And if you have sex before marriage, you're risking getting pregnant or getting STDs. That potentially can happen. So I can kind of understand how back then. But I think it was more about what it shows people. And there are still a lot of conservatives today who are like, you're living in sin if you live with your husband, with the guy before you marry him. I mean, I think even at my sister's church, there was a sermon that was talking about that. But in a practical sense, living with the guy that you are intending to marry before you marry him is probably a good thing, because then you can know, because getting married is a big commitment, so you'll know if you're cool with some of his quirks and bad habits and stuff like that, and if he's cool with yours. But anyway, so he had the nerve to call her a whore. And then there was another girl that from their town that she saw, that she left the town, I think got married. And she is so amused and sneers at Charity about that. And oh my god. Oh, those girls mocking Charity, making her feel bad about herself and shaming her. And then on top of that, then she goes home and she doesn't even want to see Lucius Harney anymore because she just wants to get out of this town. But he does find her, drags her out. And in that moment, I was kind of annoyed with him a little bit. I've been fine with him and I liked him throughout the story. But in that moment, because he was like, oh, you're running away from me, you can't get away from me. Which, yeah, I mean, he was part of it. But the biggest thing is the shame and the reputation it gives her. Marrying, seen with him and kissing him and then looking like maybe they did a little bit more than they should have. But he does convince her to stay. And, they decide to secretly meet in this little cabin, but then, and for a while, Mr. Rowe leaves them alone. He doesn't bother them, and they think, oh, he doesn't know. But then he shows up at the cabin right after he gives this speech, the scene where he gives a speech about how you should be content and so grateful you live in this beautiful town and it's so great and wonderful. And I just feel like he was talking to her and be like, you should be happy you get to live here. You should be content with your life and not want to run away. Like a guilt trip, essentially. And then, he finds him and he's all calm, but he's like, he's like, I've known all along, I know he's gonna come here, and and then when Lucius shows up, he's like, well, when are you going to marry her? Are you going to answer me? And then he says, well, I guess you won't answer unless she asks you, so you ask him, and she didn't, and Charity didn't, and then the last thing I read is, he's like, I'm gonna propose to you now, and I don't know how Charity feels about that yet. I mean, it sounds like the impression I got at the end is like she's a little taken aback by it. So I'm not sure, but I'm going to finish that one. So I only have like I think 4 more chapters if I'm reading the Roman numerals right. I think there's 18 chapters, so I'll read. I'm on chapter 15, which is breaking my rules about stopping on even chapters. So chapter 15, 16, 17, and then 18. So 4 more to go, and then I can stop. And then actually, I can take it back to the library, even though I haven't read the other ones, because this is the Rose Office. This is the collection of the last 4 novellas in that collection, which I thought at first they were essays about her life, but no, it turns out they're actually novellas, which I didn't know that. And then it does have which going by that, I don't know, I've been noticing it more and more that a lot of classic books use a lot of the same covers. The cover images. So I've seen this on another book. I can't remember. I don't even. Oh yeah, the Ibsen plays. This is the cover that my collection of for Ibsen plays. This is the same cover that they use, which I didn't realize that. Like I said, I think a lot of classic novels they use the same image for the covers, like if it's artwork or like a picture or something. But this has her 4 novellas, which is in that collection. So now I have this, so I can take it back once I finish reading Summer, which will be, I'm going to finish that tonight, and then I'll be able to take it back tomorrow. Okay, so I did read a little bit more. I didn't read Rebecca yet, but I do want to get a little bit more of that read. So I have the rest of tonight, then I have Tuesday and Wednesday. I gotta read that one. Rebecca. So I don't have anything to say about that one. I've been reading Notes from the Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And also, this one also has the double. And I guess that's why I couldn't find it on Goodreads. Because I realized, yeah, this is one with the double. But then I don't remember seeing this cover. But, this is some of Dostoevsky's novellas. Or short stories. Actually, no, short story. I think in this case, it's short stories. In Notes from the Underground is basically this guy who refuses to go by the government rules to the point of where he's living underground and telling these people about his philosophies about life and stuff, and how man is like, I don't remember. I do not remember what some of the things. Once I start reading it, it'll come back to me, but it's so interesting, his philosophy. And some of his stuff I can see where he's coming. I kind of agree with it to an extent. But it's so interesting because this guy is so cynical. And he's so, like, rebelling against society. And granted, I don't think that you can't always get away with that, because you can't afford to get away with that. But I think considering that I'm guessing this is in Russia, and they are, I don't know if they are now, or if, I don't think they are anymore, but I think at this time they were communist. I don't know, I would have to ask, like, my dad or something. So, you can't entirely blame them for wanting to live underground and not follow society's rules. And it's basically written in, what is that format? It's the same format that Ali Smith uses in Virginia Woolf. I can't think of it right now. That continuously dialoguing or monologuing, it's gonna pop into my head. And in this case, I actually like it. I mean, I think there are times when it's so funny, because I think that people, I think for me at least, it depends on the author. And so, and if you're gonna like that stream of consciousness, that's what it's called. This is stream of consciousness. I think it depends on the character and the author, on if you're gonna like that particular, at least for me anyway. Although I liked Autumn at first, but I guess I didn't like Winter. And Virginia Woolf was, at least the one I read, was kind of like, it felt like it was just about this housewife and all these guys who were attracted to her. You know, it was kind of boring for me. But this is really interesting, like, about this guy spouting his philosophy, and he's so cynical and bitter about life. about the society he's part of, where he's living underground. He's rebelling against society in the most extreme way. So even if you're like rolling your eyes and think it's stupid, granted, he lives in Russia, and that, at the time, that country was not that great, and like I said, you can't really blame him. But I'm really getting into Russian literature more, and yes, I'm gonna read some Tolstoy too. I have War and Peace, and of course, I have both big ones, War and Peace, and then Anna Karenina. So I'm gonna read both of those, and then probably watch the movies, or try to at some point. I don't know if that will, because War and Peace is the only movie that they have that is kind of old. And then Anna Karenina, I think they have more than one version of it. They have the most recent one with Keira Knightley and Jude Law in it, who they're British actors. But then again, they always have when it's a European story, they always cast British actors most of the time. Not always. I mean, there are actors from like Gerard something. I can't remember his name. Gerard Dupree, I want to say. He's a French actor. I see him a lot. But I don't see a lot of Russian actors, but maybe because the way their country is, they don't have a lot of actors that are Russian. Or at least not one that's directly from Russia there. But anyway, it's very interesting. I did read a tiny bit of Rose Matter, but not enough to really talk about it. Just that Rosie like I said, she's finally run away from her husband, and she's trying to get away. And she went to this guy for this company that aids people and told him her story, and he sent her to this place for battered women. And where she doesn't have anything with her, nothing, I wonder if she has I think she has at least a little bit of cash. I think she has her own credit card at least. And, her clothes and stuff, but she's, doesn't have a lot. And she's trying to escape her husband. And she's paranoid that he's gonna find her. Like, she saw at the bus station, I think it was, she saw although I was picturing an airport, but at the bus station she saw some police officers and made her paranoid, made her thinking, or in fact, one of them reminded her of her husband. So I don't have a lot to say. I read a tiny bit of that. I wanted to read a little bit. I always try to read at least a little bit of each of the books I've been wanting to read, just to, hoping eventually I'll make progress. Eventually I'll get into them enough that I'll keep going with them and read a lot. I didn't read the Broadway History of New York yet, or Mr. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, but I wanted to read that one for Tome Topple. What's really annoying is the Broadway one. It does get to 500, but that is basically the acknowledgments and the bibliography stuff. So it's like, I don't read that. I'm not going to read that. I mean, no disrespect to and it's good that they thank those people, and that's what you're supposed to do, especially if it's like a history book or something, but I don't take the time to read that. So it's like, it's not club. So the chapter ends in the story, the stuff I'm reading, because it's not a story, it's it's the history ends on page 420 or something. So it's it doesn't meet the criteria. I mean, maybe if you read a book that's 570, 480 pages, 470 pages, or whatever, then yeah, you could get away with using it for Tome Topple. And as I said last year, Sam is not going to come police us or anything. She's not going to come after us. All the people that participate in Tome Topple are all over the U.S. So it's not like she's going to come after us if we don't follow the criteria exactly. But, I always try to, and I'm not going to cheat to the point of where I'm reading a book that's 420 pages when it's not, the rules say it's not considered a tome. So, but I do want to read because it's Nonfiction November, And I want to read that one, and then I do have the Walt Disney one, which is definitely over 500 pages, but I'm kind of focusing on that one right now. Like I said, I hadn't do Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell yet, but I did start reading a little bit more of the Goldfinch, and so we have our character is the little boy, and I was feeling a little bit emotional when I was reading it because Theo Decker is, there was the bomb at the museum, and he's just thinking, oh, my mom must be home. She must still be at home. I mean, he's barely survived, and he's trying to get home, thinking, oh, she must be there. And, he's just feeling so, he's like the denial stage of grief, I guess. And he goes to his house, and no one's there, and he's freaking out. He tries to talk to the police and social services and everything, and he's like, he can't believe his mom is gone. And whereas his dad is not around, his dad essentially abandoned them. And he, now that the social service people have told him your mom's dead, and he doesn't, the last thing he wants to go do is go in the foster system, so they ask him if there's anyone that he would like to live with, at least for a little while, and he ends up contacting the family of a guy he was friends with in middle school. So, and I was getting emotional because, although I think anybody would, because that's one of my worst, that is probably one of my worst fears, is that my parents, dying or something happening to them before I'm ready to say goodbye to them. Of course, I'm a woman of 30, so I could function on my own, but, I've lived with my parents my whole life. They've always taken care of me. So I couldn't even fathom the idea of one day that they're going to be gone. Or, as long as, it would be easier to handle if they have not the way he loses his mom. His mom dies when the museum is blown up. And he's still a kid. And unlike me, he's a kid. He's like a teenager. And it's just been him and his mom. So I would be more equipped to deal with than he would, of course. But I don't think anyone could deal with the shock of that. But, I'm lucky in the sense that hopefully something like that will just die getting older. And that they can no longer take care of me. And I have to take care of them now. I like how it's written. It's like kind of that black chalk. I always thought that. I love the design of this book. So that's the last thing I read. He's living with the family of this kid he knew in middle school who they're very wealthy. So he's living with this wealthy family. And it's funny, Stephen King. He wrote he has a blurb on here, a triumph. Which I know he's not just, I know a lot of people he has the reputation of the king of horror, but I know he's not just a horror writer. All of his books, he writes a lot of horror, but he also writes a lot of, stories about people and life and how people react to certain things. But I'm very proud that I read quite a bit, so I'm definitely progressed in this book. And then, yesterday, I read 2 more chapters of Harry Potter last night, and one of the aspects that got left out of the movies that I was very disappointed is the whole story, between, it was included in there, but it was only, acknowledged. But, when they, in the movie version of this, Tonks tells Harry about her good news and everything, that we're pregnant, and you kind of get the impression that Tonks and Lupin are together now. But there's no, in the movie, it just comes out of nowhere. If you haven't read the books, you would be, and if you notice that, I think you'd be a little oh wait, when did that happen? Because, they totally do not cover it, except for, they mention it in like 6 movies. I don't know if it's in 6 or I think it is in 6. I think they acknowledge that they have a relationship in movie 6. But in movies 7 and 8, they're just, all of a sudden in the last movie, it's like not the last one, but the second to the last movie, they're like, Tonks is telling Harry, oh, guess what the good news and everything, and it's kind of, because it's such an interesting plot. I mean, it doesn't have to do with the main story, and that's why they felt like, oh, we can cut it out. I mean, I'm glad they put it in there at least a little bit. They acknowledged it. But it's more than just that, and Lupin is dealing with the fact for the first time that it's not just about him being the werewolf, and yeah, he might hurt his friends. It's also about that he fell in love, and Tonks loves him back, and they got pregnant and now have a kid and are gonna have a kid, and he's freaking out because, oh my god, now I'm gonna pass on this monstrous thing to my child. So he decides to he finds out that Dumbledore had sent Harry and Ron and Hermione on this mission to destroy the Horcruxes. And the last chapter I read is where he shows up, and he shows up, and he's like, oh, you don't have to tell me, but I can help you out. And they sense something's up just by the way he's acting. Like, they're even now, you're gonna leave Tonks? And he's like, oh, she'll be fine. And then eventually he's like, begrudgingly tells them, oh, she's pregnant. And they're all happy for him, of course, and they're all like, congratulations, but then he doesn't seem very happy about it. And finally, Harry snaps because he realizes that his Lupin is leaving, is choosing to go on this little adventure and abandoning Tonks and the baby because he's afraid of what he's done to his child. And Harry, of course, who lost his parents, had his parents taken away from him when he was a baby, he finally snaps and like, I can't believe you would do this. How could you abandon your child? Your child is going to need you, and you're just going to leave him? And I kind of am with Harry. I love Lupin is one of my favorite adult characters in the series, but this moment, I remember this moment vaguely before now because it's such a standout moment. It's like, it's kind of it's a development of the character and how he's not perfect. Lupin is willing to, he's so afraid of his child being a werewolf and, how it's his fault that his child will be isolated and treated badly. So he's like, I can't handle this, and he decides to run away because of his guilt. He's running away because of his guilt, and I don't blame Harry for getting mad. I mean, maybe it was respectful for Harry to threaten him, and you can kind of understand why Lupin did that. And I would have loved to see that scene because it would have been so interesting to see that scene between the two of them. Because I feel like it's a very important scene. And then, on top of that, eventually they ask Harry to be, when Lupin finally, we know that Lupin eventually comes around and realizes he can't abandon his child, because, I mean, that's the worst thing, because, I mean, especially if he's feeling so bad, then the last thing he needs to do is abandon his child, because his son will have to deal with the fact that he is seen as a monster, and Lupin has been through that, so he could teach him and be there for him and support him and help him out the best he can. So abandoning him will be like, he won't be there to help him out, and I get why he's afraid and angry and frustrated and scared and thinking, but, like I said, I'm with Harry on that. I think, I mean, I'm glad eventually they work it out before what happens. And Harry becomes the godfather of Teddy, little Lupin. And, I'm sad that they didn't include him. I'm very sad they didn't include that whole storyline, but if they made a TV show, they could have. That's another thing they could have included in the stories if they made a TV show. I mean, I know why. I appreciate the movie's existence, and I know why J.K. Rowling went with the movie, and I did a whole video on why I think it would have been a great TV show. But like I said, there's a lot that they had to cut out. In the like the first 2 books were probably the easiest ones, where you could get the ones that you could get close enough to the original what was in the book, because they're the shortest ones. But I forgot about the scene, but I remember it vaguely because I feel like it's still a standout scene. Because it shows this darker side of Lupin. When you realize, his struggle with his lycanthropy and how he's so terrified of passing on, and he's thinking, I should not have done this to Tonks. And it comes from a place of feeling guilty, which is not, it's good that he feels guilty. But then out of fear, he chooses to run away from instead of dealing with it, instead of coping with it and helping Tonks and his child. But, it shows that he's human. He's still very human. Even though he's a werewolf, he's very human. Because if he was more of a monster, he would be proud, probably, and be like, I'm awesome, I'm badass. And no, I have a legacy. I can continue my legacy. And that definitely shows the difference between him and Greyback. Anyway, who I think was the one who turned him, I believe. Greyback was the one that bit him to punish his father. Which the only reason I remember that is because I watched a video where they compared Dumbledore versus Gandalf when we're talking about their histories and stuff. I think that's the one. But, the last thing I want to talk about is I got another book at the bookstore, and that was this, which I don't know anything about except for what I'm read on the back description. I've never heard of this author, but I think it's a classics author. And I feel like in America, it seems like there's so many classics out there that we haven't heard about. That I imagine in England they have heard about most of these classics, and maybe there's some classics here in America that they haven't heard about. And there's probably plenty of classics that we ourselves here in America that are American classics that we don't know about unless we studied them in school. But I feel like because there's so many that I don't know about. But this is Pamela by Samuel Richardson. And from what I read in the back, it's basically this woman who is trying to escape trying to deal with the fact that her master desires her. He wants her sexually. And I guess that's how she's done, but she's trying to be a good, loyal servant, but having to cope with her master's sexual advances towards her. And that's the impression I got. And apparently this book made a really big impact. And you're either a Pamelist or anti-Pamelist. When it's like it looks at morality and apparently it's preached for its morality and denounces a pornography in disguise, apparently. Which I find that it's a controversy book. But anyway, yeah, so it's gonna be interesting. So the Oxford World Classics edition, there's so many different types of editions. I was struggling trying to find the edition of Notes from the Underground in the double. Of course, like I said, I didn't realize that, yes, it is the one that includes both the Notes from the Underground and the double. But I was thinking, on Goodreads, I was trying to find the exact edition because I feel like with Goodreads, you have to get pretty close to the exact edition so you can get the right number of pages when you're updating what you've read so far. And I could not find that which I was surprised because it's Penguin Classics edition. I saw a Penguin edition, the orange ones, but I could not find this black edition. I was getting really mad. I was thinking about that video that Daniel Green made about how he broke Goodreads because he was really, talking about unfortunately, there are a lot of flaws about Goodreads, and normally I don't notice them, but tonight was one of those nights when I did notice the flaws on the Goodreads flaws and how, it takes forever to find the edition you want. And if there are too many people on here, on Goodreads, then it just temporarily might shut down. So it's not, I know, I haven't noticed them. because I don't notice the flaws because they don't have as much. I don't have to deal with them as much. But I have encountered some of the problems with Goodreads. I'm just worried about signing up for another site because I'm worried it will cost or something like that, and it's another password to remember and all that. But of course, that's why my mom, suggests I use basically, but anyway, I don't know. I might look at the website and consider signing up for it. But, and it's another, like I said, another password, it's another website to remember to visit, and although it's not like with Goodreads, you're just updating things, you're just, like, so it's not like with a blog, or there was a journaling website I signed up for, where you have to update every day, and you have to spend time doing, like, a writing type of thing, or Archive Our Own, or fanfiction.net, which my account is still there, but I have not updated, and that annoys me because I wanted to update on there for the longest time, and I'm mad at myself because I swore I would not be one of those people that didn't finish writing their fanfiction, and I ended up becoming that because, unfortunately, with my Mac, I had, and I don't know if it was Pages, or then again, it might not be Pages because I got Word, but I couldn't upload my documents into fanfiction.net, so for some reason it wouldn't work, so it really annoyed me that it wouldn't let me update my work for some reason. I mean, I haven't tried in years, so who knows? I could try it one day, but I don't have anything, and I'm not in the mood to write fanfiction anymore. But yeah, anyway, so that is what's going on with my reading today. It's a little bit more going on with it since yesterday, of course. Like I said, I ended up going to the bookstore because on Sundays it's closed. The shops in the village are closed. So, and then tomorrow I'll probably go to the library. I'll go to the library and return, which is good because, like I said, I would have to be lugging that backpack around between coming back home and going up there, and it would just be a hassle. So at least now tomorrow, since I did my bookstore visit, tomorrow I can go to the library and just make that tomorrow a library day, which actually was so funny because everybody is, first of all, everyone is so amazed to find out people in my generation love actually reading physical books. But the other thing is because, I'm one of the many people who reads more than one book at the same time. And so I bring, as I've said before, I bring a whole bunch of books with me to the bookstore. But then I was worried about, taking out and reading one book and then taking out another, because then people would make it like, oh my god, how can you read, or once you read that book, or are you done with that book, or something? It would be so surprised, like, how can you read more than one book? So it's just, I ended up not dipping my toes in the other books, I loved the bookstore when I read that little bit of Rose Matter. I keep wanting to call it Rose Matter. But I almost didn't want to read it at the bookstore because I was already reading the whole thing. So it's like, I don't want to draw attention to myself for people to be like, oh my god, you're reading more than one book. How can you do that? But anyway, so done with the rambling. If you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you haven't already. I hope, as always, you are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to y'all later. Alright, bye!